My father.
We had coffee a couple of times.
Well,
about
once
this.
a year.
I said that having a- That's what he said.
Senate, please come to order. Thank you. Today's devotional exercises will be conducted by Rabbi Toby Weissman, the Director of Jewish Communities of Vermont. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I hope you are all able to see the eclipse in totality on Monday. I am still basking in the exhilaration of the experience of seeing the moon's shadow moving across the sun until it was completely blacked out, the wind picking up, the stars coming out, all of nature becoming one, it seemed, very still, leaving a bright white light around the sun and a reddish pink jewel showing. And then the amazing return of the sun's light and warmth. All of nature seemed to be in tune with the awesome moment. I hope that that moment will be with me my whole life. And I look forward to the next full eclipse in 2044. Hope we'll all be there for that. Jewish tradition teaches that within each one of us resides a great divine light, infinite light, as spiritually powerful as the sun. This awesome light is given to each person when we are born and stays with us even after we leave the world. When we are born, we are very connected to this divine light. But over time, we lose this connection. And like the eclipse of the sun, our divine light often becomes blocked. We forget that we are beings of great, awesome light, each of us. And we are so powerful to do such good in the world. So what can we do to reconnect ourselves back to our divine light? The Jewish tradition has a way for us to find our way back to our divine light, our infinite light. In less than 2 weeks, we will celebrate the holiday of Passover. And we will be at a Passover Seder, the special meal that is held where we tell the story of being slaves in Egypt. And the central message of the ancient text called the Haggadah, which means telling, that message says, in every generation, a person must see themselves as if they themselves were freed from slavery in Egypt. So why are we encouraged to see ourselves as slaves? Aren't we free people now? We don't live in Egypt under Pharaoh. This is an ancient story, isn't it? How does this story speak to us today? Rabbi Aaron Moss says, we are slaves, slaves to our own inhibitions, our fears, our habits, our prejudices, our cynicism, our thoughts that keep us enslaved, that prevent us from expressing our true inner self, from reaching our spiritual potential. Our souls are incarcerated in selfishness, laziness, and indifference. Rabbi Moss suggests the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which really means limitations. And Pharaoh represents our own egos. So instead of reading, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, he suggests what we should be reading is, we are today enslaved to our own egos and stuck in our own limitations. So how do we free ourselves from our inner Pharaoh, our own egos, our dark thoughts? our feelings like nothing is going to get better and there's nothing we can do. Well, for these next 10 days, Jews around the world will spend countless hours preparing for the spiritual liberation by cleaning our houses from something called chametz, which really means leaven. But it's really a spiritual cleansing. Yes, we are cleaning, like doing spring cleaning, but we are also cleaning ourselves on the inside. One little crumb can prevent us from shining our great light, just like you see the moon's shadow covering the whole sun. One little crumb can prevent us from even seeing the sun. Like if you held up a coin to the sun, you wouldn't be able to see the sun. So while we're doing this spring cleaning, we're focusing on what's limiting us, what has embittered us, what has soured us, what is preventing us from having a deeper connection with our souls, with our friends, with our family members, with our spouses, with our children, and with people that we don't agree with. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach says that when we get rid of our chametz, we are more able to hear the voices and cries of others and the cries of our own souls. May we have the courage to face those places within ourselves where we are stuck emotionally, physically, and spiritually, clear out that which has become embittered and soured and entrenched in order to move forward to a fuller life, to a life freed from our internal limitations and constraints. May we do this so we were able to listen and respond better to our own soul's cry and to the many vulnerable people all around us and all around the world.
Thank you. Are there any announcements? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Committee of Institutions be relieved of H 876, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to the corrections laws, and that the bill be committed to the Committee on Judiciary.
Now, the senator from Essex has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order that, excuse me, not suspend its rules. The senator from Essex moves that the Committee on Institutions be relieved of H 876, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to the corrections laws, and that the bill be committed to the Committee on Judiciary. Ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have moved, relieve the Committee on Institutions of H 876 and refer the bill to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there any other announcements? I will just make one brief announcement before I introduce or reference the House bills. Spring is a time of many holidays in many religions. We've had Easter. There's a discussion of Passover coming up, but also today is Eid, the end of Ramadan. So I thought I would just mention that in the world of the different cultures and religions that we have throughout Vermont. We have some House bills for referral. First. Oh, it's true. These bills were already referred, but now they've been acted on, but they are impacted by Rule 31. So we have some bills to refer under Rule 31. First being H 847, which affects the revenues of the state, will be referred to Committee on Finance. H 868, which impacts revenues of the state, will be referred to Committee on Finance, and H 861, which affects the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. So you don't have to listen to them be read another time yet. That brings us to the orders of the day. The first bill, we are passing over S18. First bill for consideration is H 603. 603 was read for the first time, referred to Committee on Agriculture, which considered the same and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 603, an act relating to the poultry slaughter exception to inspection.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill for the report of the Committee on Agriculture, the senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. As noted by the junior senator from Bennington when we voted this bill out last week, it was a former sergeant at arms and former senator from the Washington district, Francis Brooks, that we believe reported the last chicken bill. Nonetheless, the members of the Senate Ag Committee feel strongly that passing this bill will greatly help our poultry farmers and especially our small farmers and provide them with an economic boost. It will also offer poultry customers more choices. In essence, this bill does one thing. Under current Vermont law, farmers can only sell whole birds. This bill will allow those farmers to sell processed poultry parts. And by way of background, the Federal Poultry Products Inspection Act requires that the act of slaughtering poultry be inspected if the slaughtered poultry will be sold in interstate commerce. However, the PPIA has exemptions from inspection for certain farms slaughtering poultry. Farms are exempt from inspection under the federal law if they qualify for the 1,000 bird exemption, meaning that the producer slaughters no more than 1,000 healthy birds of his or her own in a calendar year for distribution as human food. Also, the producer does not engage in buying or selling poultry products other than those produced from poultry raised on his or her own farm, and that the processing is conducted under sanitary standards that produce poultry products that are sound, clean, and fit for human food, not adulterated. The producer has to keep records necessary for effective enforcement, and the poultry products do not move in interstate commerce. There's also a 20,000 bird exemption with the same regulations. In addition, the facility where the poultry slaughtered is not used to slaughter another person's poultry, and certain shipping and labeling requirements are met. I want to point out there is no requirement under the federal 1,000 bird exemption or the 20,000 bird exemption that the farmer may only sell whole birds. That's a federal exemption there. The federal law does allow the processing of birds slaughtered under those two exemptions into parts, and for the parts to be sold under the exemption. Vermont incorporated these exemptions slowly because of concerns from the Agency of Agriculture for public health and the potential negative effect on the Vermont brand if adulterated poultry was indeed sold. Because of those concerns, additional criteria that exceeded the federal requirements were put into place. One of those was that in Vermont, you could only sell a whole bird. So 603 amends the state statute for the 1,000 bird and 20,000 bird exemptions and a unique to Vermont 5,000 bird exemption to remove the prohibition of the sale of processed poultry parts. Under H603, a farmer slaughtering under the 1,000, 5,000, or 20,000 bird exemption will not be limited to selling the whole bird. They will be allowed, as they are under federal law, to sell processed parts. So if you look at the bill, in section 3312B, 2 and 3, the word raw is added before poultry products. This was added at the recommendation of the agency to ensure that farmers knew they could not be selling prepared cooked foods under these exemptions, and the exemptions only apply to the sale of the raw product. Similarly, in 3312C, the 5,000 bird exemption is also amended with that word raw and by removing the whole bird requirement. And in section 3312D, the 20,000 bird exemption is also amended similarly. In 3312E3, the bill would require that raw poultry products slaughtered under the exemption and sold from the farm or a farmer's market or a restaurant be labeled with the name of the product, like wings or thighs or breasts or whatever, for consumer transparency and protection. Committee heard from 12 different farmers, from the meat inspection section chief at the Agency of Agriculture, from NOFA Vermont, the general counsel, the Agency of Agriculture, the legislative director of rural Vermont, legislative counsel, and the reporter of the bill from the other body. And the committee vote was 5-0-0, and we asked the full Senate to concur. Thank you, Mr. President.
Before I announce the question, I just want to point out that I believe the senator from Rutland, given the county he is from, at one point substituted the word Poultney for the word poultry, but I think he meant poultry. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Senator from Caledonia,
Thank you. May I interrogate the reporter? of the
Senator
bill?
from Rutland.
This bill brings back memories to some of us around uninspected chickens. And at that point, some of us were feeling that it might have a chilling effect to meet the state requirement that restaurants post with their menu that they serve uninspected chickens, which is what the law provided. We had suggested that perhaps it would be better to have some kind of certification in terms of the slaughter, the cooling and so forth, as opposed to putting something on the menu. And I'm just wondering if that requirement is still in place, and in fact are, because you can sell them to restaurants, if in fact that requirement is still on the books, and if so, is there any compliance? I must confess, I've never seen a menu saying we serve uninspected chickens. So, and some of us, whose first names begin with Dick and one ends with Jane, we said Dick and Jane got plucked on that one. So we just want to know what the law currently provides. Thank you.
I thank the senator for the question, Mr. President. As far as I know, all poultry products sold from the farm at a farmer's market or to a food restaurant pursuant to the exemption shall be labeled with the following information: the name of the farm and producer, the address of the farm, including the zip code, and also the name of the product. And I believe there's also provision for it to be indicated that the chicken or turkey or whatever has not been inspected.
Thank you, Mr. President. I gather from that that requirement is still on the books. Thank you.
Senator from Essex,
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I inquire of the reporter of the bill, please?
Senator from Rutland.
Mr. President, two age-old questions. We just need to find out, and here's a perfect opportunity. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And the other is, why did the chicken cross the road? Does this bill answer those questions, Mr. President?
I thank the senator for the question. I don't believe there are any provisions in this bill that would help him answer that question. I think it has to determine for itself.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Mr. President, I'd just like to say that I think that some of these questions are a little foul.
With that, the question is, shall the chicken be plucked a third time? Shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H603. And again, I apologize if I either speak too fast, make a few errors, or whatnot. I'm on my third day of very high dose of prednisone to deal with the eye problem that I had last week. So bear with me. If I'm unclear, just ask me for clarity. We now have up for consideration H621. 621 is read for the first time, referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which considers the same and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H621, an act relating to health insurance coverage for diagnostic breast imaging.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare, the senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bill about a serious topic, so I'm going to refrain from any jokes that might lead from the previous bill. But this is a bill about health insurance coverage for diagnostic breast imaging. Breast cancer is the #1 type of cancer for women in Vermont. Nearly 30% of all cases of cancer in female identifying Vermonters are due to breast cancer. And so it's really important that women be screened for breast cancer. And in fact, a report from a year ago published by UVM shows that there's a declining rate of screening for mammography screening in Vermont, meaning that fewer women between the ages of 50 and 74, which are the population that are at the highest risk for being diagnosed with breast cancer, fewer women in that age category are actually getting diagnostic breast imaging or mammography screening. So this is a bill that is trying to improve those numbers and address that problem. And if I may, Mr. President, read a little bit from the testimony that we got from the Vermont Medical Society.
Without objection, you may.
I think it actually explains the bill quite well. So with gratitude to Jill Stodoff-Guerin from the Vermont Medical Society. Most health insurance plans are required to cover screening mammograms every 1 to 2 years for women beginning at age 40 with no out-of-pocket costs, meaning no cost sharing or no co-pays. Unfortunately, recent changes to screening guidelines, differing insurance plans following different screening recommendations, and differing coverage for 2 and 3D mammography imaging all contribute to confusion and concerns around potential costs related to breast cancer screenings. In 2013, the Vermont legislature passed Act 25, which not only required zero cost sharing for the screening by mammography, but also included additional views in the definition of screening. The intent of the additional views was to include what is known as callback mammograms. For my sisters in the room, for those of us who've had callback mammograms, these are actually, they were supposed to be callback mammograms at no cost. They are extremely common and are often the result of an unclear image or the need for a retake. In fact, approximately 10 to 12% of Vermont mammograms require a callback, which is why it is so important that they are part of the definition of diagnostic breast imaging. So what this bill does is make sure that those callback mammograms, which are medically necessary, part of breast imaging, and that are recommended by a healthcare provider, that those are included in coverage with no cost sharing. And they are used to screen and abnormalities of the breast or breast tissue. And includes all types of imaging. This could be ultrasound imaging, mammography, or MRI imaging. So this makes clear that there's no cost sharing for those images that are diagnostic in nature. It does exclude high deductible health plans because of a federal requirement that those plans not be included. So you'll see in section 1 of the bill, going to the bill, which is referenced in our calendar on page 2032, but it is actually not there because we just are passing the House, or hopefully passing or recommending the House version. We made no changes in the Health and Welfare Committee. So section 1 goes over what is required to be included with no cost sharing. It accepts the high deductible plans and includes a definition of other breast imaging services. Means diagnostic mammography, ultrasound, and magnetic resonance imaging services that enable healthcare providers to detect the presence or absence of breast cancer and other abnormalities affecting the breast or breast tissue. The date of effective date would be January 1st of 2026, and which is common to give health insurance plans the time to make the adjustments in their plans to cover the services. Again, these services are almost all covered by health insurance plans, but this would be for no cost sharing for such plans. We heard from a series of witnesses, including, of course, the Vermont Medical Society, the American Cancer Society, Legislative Council, the House sponsor or reporter of the bill, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. That is the bill, Mr. President, and it was passed 5-0-0 by your Committee of Health and Welfare, and we recommend concurrence with the House version of H621. Thank you, Mr. President.
I've heard the report of the committee, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I might ask a question of the reporter.
Senator from Madison is interrogated as a reporter.
A very simple question, I hope. So under effective date, I'm wondering if the word on after the date on line 3 should be or.
On line 3, on or after January 1st, is that what you mean?
No, I'm wondering if it should read insurance plans issued on and after January 1, 2026 or such date, rather than on such date.
I'm looking at our attorney and she is shaking her head no.
Okay, I do have difficulty reading it with the word on there.
Would you like to take a recess so I can confirm?
No, that's fine. I'll confer with the council and probably no issue before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire, please?
Senator from Madison is interrogated as a reporter.
I noted that one of the witnesses providing testimony was Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Correct.
And I'm just wondering, I see two bills here. I'm not in any way debating the merits of what this is, but was there a fiscal impact on premiums? One of the things we've been concerned about are obviously the cost of premiums, and you did make reference to the high deductible plans. I just wondered if you had testimony in terms of what would be the estimated impact, if any, on premiums. Maybe there are offsetting savings in regard to early detection, but I was wondering if you received any kind of fiscal feedback.
Yes, thank you for that question, and I was remiss in not mentioning it in my report. We did get testimony about the cost impact from Blue Cross, and the House took testimony from other insurance companies as well. The impact would be de minimis. Blue Cross already covers this with no cost sharing for most of their plans. The exception is the high deductible plans, which the House, the other body, excuse me, already accepted. It also is covering a very narrow slice, as you know, Mr. President. Any plans that are covered by the ERISA plans that are self-insured plans would not be included in this. This is already covered by our state Medicaid program with no cost sharing. So there would not be an impact on the Medicaid budget. And the small slice of the private insurance, the testimony we received from Blue Cross is that it would be very minimal because it's almost always already covered with no cost sharing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 621. I received a note asking if we would pass over H 666, and therefore we will be taking up H 741. H 741 was read for the first time, referred to Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports that they considered the bill and recommend that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 741, an act relating to health insurance coverage for colorectal cancer screening.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare, the Senator from Chittenden Central.
Hello, Mr. President.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. President. H 741 is an act relating to health insurance coverage for colorectal cancer screening. It's a short bill, as you will see when it arrives on your desk. And some of you may have read recently the article in the New York Times about colorectal cancer. The American Cancer Society predicted 153,000 new colorectal cancer diagnoses in 2023, of which 19,550 would be people younger than 50 years old. But millennials now have twice the risk of colon cancer compared with people born around the 1950s. While millennials' risk of for rectal cancer is about 4 times that of older age groups. Diagnoses will likely rise as these age groups age, as these folks age. So this bill will align Vermont's requirements for health insurance coverage of colorectal screening with federal coverage requirements for individuals who are not at high risk. So you will see, and this is section 1, and it is amending 8 BSA 4100G. That it now will state that insurers are already required to comply with the federal requirements. So this does not change current practice. For individuals who are at high risk, the bill maintains existing provisions requiring coverage for screening exams and lab tests as recommended by the individual's treating provider. This bill also replaces the word physician with clinician throughout the statute, which really broadens the description of the types of providers who may be recommending or performing colorectal cancer screening. This bill does not change any provider scope of practice. It's just a more accurate description of care delivery. The section 2 is the effective date that the bill would take effect on January 1st of 2025 and apply to plans issued, offered, or renewed on or after that date, but not later than January 1st, 2026. We voted this bill out of committee 500, the Health and Welfare Committee, and we heard from Ledge Counsel, from Mike Fisher, who is our Chief Healthcare Advocate at the Office of Healthcare Advocate, Vermont Legal Aid. We also heard from Representative Leslie Goldman, who was the reporter from the House Committee on Healthcare, and Sarah Teachout, who is the Director of Government, Public and Media Affairs at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. There were also several people who testified in healthcare. And we hope that the body will concur with our favorable vote. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of H 741. And you are, of course, welcome to walk back to your seat. It's just you can't pass notes, so you don't have to stand if you don't want to. We have up for consideration H 694. H 694 was read for the first time, referred to the Committee on Judiciary, which considered the same and recommends that when the bill is amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 694, an act relating to sexual exploitation.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the Committee on Judiciary, the Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. In 2003, the U.S. Congress unanimously passed the Prison Rape Elimination Act. The purpose of that act is to provide for the analysis of the incidents and effects of prison rape in federal, state, and local institutions, and to provide information, resources, recommendations, and funding to protect individuals from prison rape. In addition to creating a mandate for significant research, the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the National Institute of Justice funding through the Bureau of Justice Assistance and National Institute of Corrections has supported major efforts in many state correctional, juvenile detention, community corrections, lockup, and jail systems. PREA includes 43 standards that define 3 clear goals: to prevent, detect, and respond to sexual abuse. H 694 is a state bill to make Vermont's state law better aligned with PREA standards. Simply put, it makes it so that it is not legal for corrections staff to engage in a sexual relationship with anyone under the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. The bill defines a sexual act as it is defined by 13 VSA 3251 and 2821. We've now seen this dual definition in 2 other bills, and it's become quite apparent that our current definitions may need to be updated to be more inclusive of all sexual conduct, sexual assault, whether or not it is penetrative. Section 1 of the bill prohibits employees, contractors, and service providers of the Department of Corrections in engaging in sexual acts and conduct with anyone in the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. Violations of this law carry a penalty of imprisonment for not more than 5 years and/or a fine of not more than $10,000. Section 2 of the bill updates the language about sexual exploitation of a minor to include both definitions under 13 VSA 3251 and 2821 to again be broader in how we are defining sexual engagement. Section 3 of the bill updates the investigatory sex prohibition that was passed a few years ago to include both 13 VSA 3251 and 2821. And Section 3A is the Senate Judiciary Amendment that acknowledges that the issue of sexual engagement, sexual assault, sexual act, sexual conduct seems to be requiring a more inclusive and updated definition. As evidenced by this being the third bill this session where we had to draw on multiple parts of statute to try to define what we meant when we said sexual conduct, this amendment tasks the Sentencing Commission to review our current statutes regarding sexual assault, lewd and lascivious conduct, and sexual acts to create a more broad and expansive definition. They are to report to the House and Senate Committees on Judiciary in December of 2024 on the legislative actions that can be taken to update these definitions. Your Committee on Judiciary heard from many witnesses, and the vote in committee was 5-0-0, and we asked the Senate to concur with our proposal of amendments and then the underlying bill. Thank you.
Question is, shall the Senate adopt the report of the Committee on Judiciary? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have adopted the report of the Committee on Judiciary. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 694. That completes the orders of the day. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that pending announcements, the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. Thursday, April 11th. And if I might commence the announcements.
You may.
Thank you. With the resignation of Senator Mazza, there's another Senate post that is unfilled, and that is the Dean of the Senate. The Dean of the Senate is the longest serving member consecutively. So we have two very long serving members. Senator McCormick has served the longest, but not consecutively. And that is a key technicality. So our new Dean of the Senate is the senior senator from Bennington, Senator Richard Sears. Please applaud. In recognition of that long service, there is a parking space for Senator Sears. Thank you very much.
Maybe now he can arrive on Tuesdays by 9:30. Are there any other announcements? Senator from Madison,
Senate Government Operations will meet 5 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Washington,
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet 5 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Bennington,
Mr. President, Senate Education will meet 10 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Essex,
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet 15 minutes after the fall of the gavel. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I know all of you thought tonight was the last farmer's night of the season, and it would have been had we not had the snowstorm of last week, when all the performers who were going to come in to celebrate the life and legacy of our own Pete Sutherland weren't able to come. So in fact, there will be a farmer's night next week honoring the life and the musical legacy of Pete Sutherland. Tonight, however, we continue to celebrate the eclipse with a really magnificent performance by Solaris, a wonderful vocal ensemble that is going to be singing tonight at 7:30. It's their 10th anniversary, and it's going to be a springtime serenade. I encourage all of you to come and join me at 7:30 in the House chamber. Thank you.
Senator from Addison,
Thank you, Mr. President, Senate Natural Resources will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and then back 8:30 on Friday.
are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate now stand adjournment until Thursday, April 11th at 1 p.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will now stand adjourned until Thursday, April 11th at 1 p.m.